As the 48,363 spectators settled in their seats at Eden Park a short time ago, a lot of them were wondering whether that All Blacks record was going to be a burden or whether it was going to be a boost. Let's find out in this video. Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If it's your first time here, my name is Mark. I'm a retired Kiwi bloke who's living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. I started this YouTube channel about rugby a year ago, and the only reason I did that is because I want to play a small role in trying to help the beautiful game grow across the world. So I thought if I shared my passion for the game of rugby online, who knows, we might get a whole lot of new people connected to the game, and we can also give those stalwart fans of the game another platform for them to engage with each other and share their comments. And talking about that, make sure you drop your comments in this video as well. And if you do like my content, why not hit the subscribe button and become part of our amazing rugby global family we have here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Now, the All Blacks were playing England in the second test match at Eden Park. The first one, of course, last weekend in Dunedin. The All Blacks narrowly winning that one by 16 points to 15. Everything seemed to be on the line for the All Blacks before this game, with that record hanging over their head at Eden Park. It's been 30 years since they were beaten, but I don't think we'd seen a better England team than this one turn up in New Zealand to play the All Blacks. So it was going to be a really fascinating game. Now, just before the game got underway, a couple of interesting facts that came out. The first one was this is England's 19th game since last year, so they've played a lot of rugby. This was their final game before the players could go on holiday and have a bit of a break. And Maro Itoje has played over 2,000 minutes in those games, so he's put in a lot of rugby, that's for sure, in the past 8 to 10 months. So it was a huge expectation on both groups after that first game. It was very tight. A lot of people thought in New Zealand that England could win this game, and when the game got underway, it was absolutely frantic. I don't know if I keep saying this, but we see these games starting off at 1,000,000 miles an hour and both teams going at it, and that's what we saw in the first couple of minutes in this game. It was to and fro. Both teams had the ball. They showed their intention to run it. They went wide, and they really looked like they were going to go for it for the whole game. It was a very, very exciting start to this game. Now, Freddie Stewart had started this game for England at fullback, taking over the reins from George Furbank late in the piece because Furbank had an injury to his back, and Freddie Stewart was called up pretty much last minute to come into this game. And his first play of the game wasn't a very good one indeed. He had a bit of trouble under a high ball from New Zealand and put him under a little bit of pressure, and Freddie Stewart felt that one, so the All Blacks got the better of him in that first encounter. As I said, the first couple of minutes were absolutely helter-skelter in this game, and it didn't take long for us to see the first scrum. And this was going to be a really interesting part of the game. Was the English pack going to be able to have some kind of power and dominance over the All Blacks, or the All Blacks were going to be able to correct some of the technical things that a few people had been saying during the week? Well, it was a great first up scrum from the All Blacks. They got a penalty from it, and it set the scene that the scrums were going to be a really interesting part of the game. Now, in those opening minutes, we saw 3 scrums take place in the first 8 minutes, so there was a lot of pressure on each of the packs to perform in those scrums, and it was very tight. Nick Berry, the referee, was keeping a close eye on it to see what was happening, and whilst he didn't give away too many penalties in the beginning, he did warn each team, but he gave them a lot of time to get set and get prepared. And so as the first few minutes ticked away, the longer it went on, it seemed to me that England was starting to get a little bit of an upper hand on this game. They were putting a lot of pressure on the All Blacks and rushing the All Blacks into doing things, and we saw this, didn't we, in Dunedin in the first game. It was Marcus Smith in this game that started to do some really clever things in the first 10 minutes. We saw him using his kicking skills to great avail in the first minutes, and he was putting the All Blacks into a state of confusion. They didn't know whether he was going to chip short, chip long, pass the ball, run the ball. He was using every option in his toolkit, and it was working against this All Black team. So the longer we went at the beginning of that game, that first 10 minutes or so, we started to see the All Blacks getting a little bit confused, a little bit rushed, and England started to put a little bit of pressure on the All Blacks going forward. But we got to the 10th minute of the game, and it was the All Blacks that were going to open the scoring in this game, and it was a great move down the left-hand side of the field. Perifetta involved again. The ball went out to Mark Talia, and he went down and over for a try. A little bit controversial when the TMO showed it. Not too sure whether his foot was in touch or hit the post before he got the ball down, but Nick Berry was happy enough with it. So were the TMO. They gave the try, and Damien McKenzie slotted a fantastic conversion from right out wide on the touchline, and the All Blacks had a little bit of breathing space. They got some points on the board after England had been quite dominant in those first 10 minutes. So New Zealand lead 7 points to 0 after 10 minutes in the game. And what I like about this England team is that after absorbing some pressure from the All Blacks and some points, they got straight back into it again and put the pressure on themselves, and they came forward down the field. And we only had to wait 3 minutes after the All Blacks had scored. In the 13th minute, we saw a fantastic kick from Marcus Smith across field, one of those kick cross passes, and Fa'i Wabaso got the ball for England, dissected the New Zealand defence beautifully. He had 2 men to beat. He came inside them both and scored a fantastic try for England. They were right back into this game. What was great about this try for me for England was Marcus Smith's composure. He was reading the play really well. He saw that Fa'i Wabaso had an opportunity to get the ball and take on the New Zealand defence out wide, and that's exactly what happened and how they scored the try. Smith was good with the conversion, so after 15 minutes of the game, we were all tied up at 7 points all. This was going to be a close encounter, there was no doubt about it. But I was feeling at this stage of the game that England were really starting to get on top of the All Blacks. They were in their minds, and they were getting them to rush a lot of things. Finlay Christie, who I've talked a lot about in my videos about New Zealand so far since he's been selected, wasn't doing the job for me at the base of the breakdowns and the scrums. Technically, he's a little bit slow, he gets caught a lot of the time, and if he doesn't, he telegraphs his pass and what he's going to do, so the defence have a great opportunity to get up in the back line, and that was starting to happen again in this particular game. So England had scored, and now it's time for the All Blacks to come back and put pressure on again, and they had a fantastic attack which was started by Mark Talia after Damien McKenzie got through a break. Talia had Perifetta in support. Perifetta gave the ball back to Talia, and normally Mark Talia, who believed in himself, would have taken off for the goal line, but he didn't. He hesitated, and he got caught by the defence of England, and it was Marcus Smith, that man who was playing a fantastic game up until this stage. He got back in defence, and he got Mark Talia down. Bit disappointing from that one for me. I thought Mark Talia would have pinned his ears back and gone for the corner, but he hesitated, and it allowed Smith to get back and get him. But it was fantastic defence from Marcus Smith. Very, very well played on that occasion. A missed opportunity for the All Blacks. In the 19th minute, there was a example of what I was talking about with Finlay Christie. He was trying to get the ball out of the back of a breakdown, and Ben Earl came around and absolutely grabbed him and stopped him from getting the ball out. And it just reinforced with me, I would rather have seen Ratama on the field starting this game for the All Blacks, but my prayers came to an end not too long into this game. And then 1 more minute into the game, around the 20th minute mark, New Zealand got another penalty, an indiscretion from England, and Damien McKenzie was able to take a shot at goal. That was successful. New Zealand went into the lead after 21 minutes by 10 points to 7. As the game unfolded, we started to see and recognise that the New Zealand line-out was a mess. A couple of reasons for this, I think. First of all, it's very difficult to replace Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock. And a little bit like Wales and some other nations, New Zealand are going through a rebuilding phase as well. And it doesn't seem to be the case that we've got world-class line-out locks at this stage in our evolution. So England were making a real mess of our lineouts, and so that was the first thing I recognised about the lineouts. But the second one was Maro Itoje. He was absolutely brilliant for England in the lineouts, disrupting the New Zealand throws and also winning good strong ball for England. So as we got close to the 25th minute mark of the first half, it was all England in the lineouts. New Zealand's lineouts were a mess, and that put a lot of pressure on them, because when they did get a penalty and they kicked for touch, they weren't guaranteed that they're going to win the line-out ball. So it had New Zealand in two different minds on what they were going to do through the strategic part of the play, and that was something that was starting to play on their minds, and you could see it as well. They even went for a couple of short lineouts. They even stuffed those ones up, Adi Savia dropping the ball on one occasion. So New Zealand had to find a solution to the lineout problems. 25th minute of the game, and we had a play where Jordie Barrett saved the day for the All Blacks. England looked like they were going to get through, score some points. They put a very good kick through. Jordie Barrett was the last line of defence, and he was sliding along the ground. How he did it, I don't know, but he was able to get his hands on the ball, control the ball, and save it for the All Blacks. So that was a close call for the All Blacks. England could have gone close on that particular occasion. By the time we got to the 28th minute of the game, England had started conceding some penalties. It was 6-1 against them in the count at this stage of the first half, and I'm sure that would have been something that was starting to worry Steve Borthwick in these games where it's very, very close. Giving away those penalties at crucial times, we're just putting allowing the opportunity for the All Blacks just to release that pressure valve a little bit. And I thought if England had kept their hammer down at that stage and not conceded those penalties, the All Blacks would have kept building more and more pressure. How it was in the game, the All Blacks weren't handling the pressure very well that England were putting on them, and I thought that was a little bit of a missed opportunity for England at that stage of the game. So heading into the last 10 minutes before half time, and a couple of really interesting plays developed. First one was in the 33rd minute, Maro Itojo, that man I'd been talking about, he cleanly won a New Zealand line-out throw, and that must have put the shivers up Razor Robertson a little bit. They had some talking to do at half time about the way that these line-outs were going. The one thing that was working well, I thought, for New Zealand was their midfield defence. Rico Ioane had put on some big hits in that first half, along with Jordie Barrett, and I thought the New Zealand defence in the midfield was doing very well. Where it was lacking and where England were making yards were around the outsides, and I think Mark Tilley and Sevu Reece were having trouble controlling Tommy Freeman and Fa'i Waboso on the wings for England. However, a couple of minutes later, 35th minute of the game, and the All Blacks got a penalty opportunity. Mackenzie put it over. That put the All Blacks out to 13 points to 7, and that would have been a really good score to go to half time, considering how England were, what I thought, dominating that first half and putting a lot of pressure on the All Blacks. But that's not the way the first half was going to end in this game. No, not indeed. And in fact, the halftime siren had already sounded. England had the ball in control, and they played a number of phases of play, and then the ball came out to that man again, Marcus Smith. He put in a kick across the field, and Tommy Freeman this time went up like an AFL player from Melbourne, Australia, grabbed the ball out of the air and went down over the line in the tackle of one of the All Blacks. It was a fantastic take by Tommy Freeman. His aerial skills were fantastic, and being able to reach up, grab the ball, control it, come down and get over the goal line, it really was something beautiful to watch as far as that execution. So once again, Marcus Smith seeing the opportunity out wide. The All Blacks were threatened under that high ball, and Tommy Freeman finished it off clinically at the end. The conversion was successful, and out of nowhere basically we saw England go to the half time with the lead by 14 points to 13. 1 point lead in this game. It couldn't be much tighter. So my first half summary of that game was basically England outplayed the All Blacks. I think they were in their minds a lot. They were rushed in their attacking plays. They didn't have any real solutions to the line out at all. And England, every time they got the ball, they were making decisive decisions that were paying off. And they looked very, very good no matter what they did in the play. Their forwards were going very well in loose play as well, which was another dimension that would have pleased Steve Borthwick. But Marcus Smith was having one of the games of his life. In fact, in the games that I've watched Marcus Smith play, I don't think I've seen him have a better 40 minutes of rugby than I saw in this game. But he was ably assisted by the rest of his team. Alex Mitchell was doing good things at halfback, and out wide Henry Slade and Ollie Lawrence were getting into the fray as well by doing a lot of good breaks, but also great in defence when the All Blacks did have the ball. Freddie Stewart had come good in that first half and did a couple of good things under the high ball, ran the ball back, did a couple of good kicks in general play, and I thought he was going pretty well after that first mistake he made early in the game. I think the All Blacks would have gone into the sheds at half-time feeling the nervousness of the crowd, because they were nervous. They could see England were really playing very, very well in this game, as was expected. and they were going to have to do something significant to turn this game around, because England had the momentum. And I'm sure England probably didn't want to go to half time when the whistle finally blew, because they got that try. They really had their backs, or they had the All Blacks backs against the wall, and they could have put them out of distance. So on the All Black side, a few things that I wasn't very impressed with. First of all, the lineouts. Of course, I thought the scrum was working reasonably well. They held themselves up. De Groot had organised himself a little bit more in the scrums and was doing well in that area. Christie wasn't impressing me. Damien McKenzie was getting rushed as well at 10, although he was playing well. He was getting some good balls, but he was always on the back foot, and the All Blacks weren't able to get forward momentum. The wingers for me in New Zealand for this first half were having a little bit of trouble. Sevu Reece and Mark Talia making simple errors that were costing the All Blacks at different times. Stephen Perifetta at fullback was having another good game, and Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane, as I said, were doing very well in the midfield. So the All Blacks had to try and decrease the errors again. We heard that after the first game, but they were sneaking in to their play, and it was stopping them from getting any real momentum and forward power against this English defence. However, it was still the rush defence that was causing the All Blacks problems, and the All Blacks, Razor Robertson talks about finding solutions to the problems during the game. Up until half time, the All Blacks hadn't found the solutions to get around this England rush defence. Now, as I always say, the beginning of the second half is an always important period of the game, and I thought if England had come out and put some points on early in that second half, it would have put the All Blacks under extreme pressure. Didn't work out that way. The All Blacks got the better of the first couple of minutes of the second half, and we saw England getting penalised on a couple of occasions again, so that worked in the All Blacks' favour to try and get themselves a little bit more into the game. Now, in the first few minutes of the second half, we saw another issue the All Blacks were having trouble with throughout this game, and that was exiting from their own 22. We saw it in the first half with a couple of poor kicks from Damien McKenzie, and early in the second half we saw Stephen Perifetta only just get the ball outside the All Blacks 22 when he had plenty of time to kick the ball and didn't get any distance at all. In fact, the only one I think that's really good at kicking the ball any long distance in the New Zealand backline is Geordie Barrett. He always finds some good distance, but Damien McKenzie and Stephen Perifetta were having trouble with getting good secured exits kicks for the New Zealand All Blacks. So we got to the 47th minute mark, and it was a penalty opportunity for Marcus Smith that put England further in the lead. And as I said, getting points early in the second half was going to be important. It was 3 points that were very valuable to England. They went out to 17-13, and now we had 32 minutes left in the game and a lot of pressure on the All Blacks. Was this particular penalty going to give England some momentum in the game and shift it in their favour? Or were we going to see something from the All Blacks that was going to change this game around? Time was starting to run out. Well, over the next 5 minutes of the game, the All Blacks kept doing things that made the crowd very nervous and a little bit quiet. We saw another poor kick on exit from the All Blacks, this time from Sevu Reece. And the ball, as I said, just got outside the 22 line of the All Blacks, putting them under pressure. England had the line out, and we're starting to go forward again in the second half. I thought at this stage of the game, if England were going to be able to score a try, they would have got out of sight of New Zealand. They were just hanging on at this stage of the game, the All Blacks, and they didn't look. But on the 55th minute of the game, everything changed around, and it was because Razor Robertson decided to put Beauden Barrett on the field. And we also saw Cortez Ratama come on at halfback for Finlay Christie, who got an injury and had to go off. Now, those two changes for me started to change everything in this game, and we saw immediately with Beauden Barrett taking the initiative and trying to get through the English defence with some clever kicking options, and he was able to turn the English team around and start putting them under pressure. This seemed to wake up the rest of the All Black team, and we started to see some momentum shifting to the New Zealanders. I was watching Ratama as well at halfback. He started getting the ball out really quickly, and things started to move forward for the All Blacks. It was a good substitution decision at that stage from Scott Robertson. Next 5 minutes of the game, it really started to shift, and we saw New Zealand really getting on the front foot. We saw them running the ball. We saw them getting some drives through the forwards and doing some good runs. 60th minute mark, Anton Leonard-Brown came on for the All Blacks, another dimensional change in the back line that I thought was going to help the Kiwis. And those changes that the All Blacks made really started to see the momentum shift. It was only a matter of time that I thought the All Blacks needed to score. But the critical thing was they needed to put a score on the board and wrestle back the lead in this game as time was running down on the clock. 61 minutes into the game, just 19 minutes left, and it finally happened, and it was that man Beauden Barrett that got through a fantastic gap, put his foot down and had Mark Talia in support on the left hand side outside. Talia went over untouched in the corner for a great try to the All Blacks, and the All Blacks were back in the lead. This McKenzie conversion was missed on this occasion, but the All Blacks had wrestled back to the lead, 18 points to 17, with just 18 minutes to go in the game. Down to 1 point game again. Who would have believed after these two teams had been going at it now for nearly 140 minutes of rugby. Absolutely brilliant stuff. 67th minute of the game, and it was another New Zealand attack getting close to the line, and thanks to Beauden Barrett, the All Blacks had got through again and were putting more pressure on. Now, as all this was happening and the momentum in the game was starting to change, we started seeing the English team getting a little bit tired. We saw a few injury breaks, or so-called injury breaks, from England trying to take in some deep breaths. The All Blacks were running multi-phases of play at them, and this is where the All Blacks really started to wake up in this game, and it was all due to Beauden Barrett's presence on the field. He was really changing the dynamic, and having him and McKenzie on the field, it seemed to be too much for the English defence. They didn't know what way the All Blacks were going to go, or on the other side of the coin, the All Blacks now had two options to really run their offensive strategies with Barrett and McKenzie on the field at the same time. This seemed to be a masterstroke from Scott Robertson, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, because while Stephen Perifetta did play very well, was this a costly mistake by putting him in there at fullback and not getting the same kind of attacking prowess that we get from somebody like Beauden Barrett, that's had over 120 caps for the New Zealand All Blacks. With 12 minutes to go in the game, the All Blacks got another penalty opportunity. Damian McKenzie got it over, and from 1 point they went out to 4 points in the lead, 21 points to 17, and this was putting more pressure on the English team. Again, the England team looked like they were tiring a little bit, and they started to fall off some of the tackles. The changes that were made on the England side as well had an impact on this game. I thought the New Zealanders were getting better as this game went on. We saw the likes of Fletcher Newell come on, who was having a big impact in the scrums, and Asafa Amua was doing some really good things in the loose play as well. We saw the New Zealanders continue the pressure into the last 10 minutes of this game, and as we did, we saw Maro Itoje give away a couple of penalties. So he'd played fantastic for 65 minutes, was getting a little bit tired by the looks of it, made a couple of mistakes by not getting out of there quick enough in the breakdown, and Nick Berry was able to ping him for those mistakes. However, Itoje had played a fantastic game up until that stage. I think what we'd seen was the difference of the two benches. On this occasion, the All Blacks bench both the forwards that had come on, plus also Beauden Barrett, Anton Leonard-Brown and Cortez Ratama had made the real difference for this All Black team on this given night. And it was that man that I just mentioned, Maro Itoje, who in the 76th minute of the game gave away a penalty during a line-out where he slapped the hand of Scott Barrett whilst in the air. Of course, that's an offence, and Damian McKenzie stood up to take a fairly easy kick at goal, got that one over, and the All Blacks were out to 24 points to 17 with just a couple of minutes left on the clock. So if England scored a converted try, they could only draw the game with as many minutes remaining. So it was down to the All Blacks to see whether they could keep England out in the last 2 minutes of this game. And as was to be expected from these two teams, it went right down to the wire again. The English had a fantastic roll towards the All Black line, but unfortunately Ollie Lawrence got in front of the man with the ball, who was Jamie George, and whilst they did go over the try line and they got held up by Beauden Barrett, that man who was at the bottom of the ruck, Nick Berry decided to look at the TMO for about 4 minutes and finally make a decision that yes, Ollie Lawrence was in front of the man who was carrying the ball as they broke away from the maul situation. So effectively he was offside, and that's how the game ended. The All Blacks were awarded a penalty kick. Damian McKenzie tapped the ball and then kicked it over the goal line, and the All Blacks record at Eden Park remained intact. 49 games without losing a game at the amazing Eden Park Stadium. But boy, what a game of rugby it was. My hat goes off to England and all of the English fans. It was another fantastic game. You really brought your best rugby to New Zealand, and it was a great escape, I think, for the All Blacks at Eden Park on this particular occasion. Scott Razor Robertson made the right call at the right time with the substitutes in this game. Beauden Barrett was instrumental in turning this game around, but I think also Fletcher Newell and Asafa Amur coming into the forwards also had a big impact that shouldn't be underestimated in this particular game. It was another insanely good game of rugby between two really good rugby teams, and it was fantastic to watch. It was nail-biting stuff there, and I thought for 60 minutes of this game England had the upper hand. They were really playing good rugby, good smart rugby. They were executing things well, and they were clinical when the time counted. Maybe giving away a few too many penalties in that first half really cost them at the end of the day when you sit back and reflect on the game. Maybe they could have got more out of it if they'd shut those down a little bit. But for me, it was when Beauden Barrett came on the field that this game changed for the All Blacks. It gave them the momentum and the different point of attack that they were really missing. And what it shone out to me was the difference in the play, that when Beauden Barrett is on with Damian McKenzie, the All Blacks have another option, and that keeps the defences guessing. And that's exactly what happened in this particular moment. And as the All Blacks were running the ball a lot more at the English and being more successful in gaining yards, the English were getting tired and they were starting to fall off tackle. So it was just something that happens at that time of the game when the reserves come on and we start seeing fatigue coming into the other team's legs. The All Blacks will go away with this game, I don't think, very happy with that first 60 minutes performance. I think if they played the whole game like they did in the last 20 minutes, we might have been talking a little bit differently about this win. But I think to a large degree this was a bit of a great escape from the All Blacks. That first 60 minutes there was a lot of concerning accuracy things in their game that weren't going very well, from the lineouts, which were terrible. They were an absolute mess. I thought the scrums were better this week. They were managing those well, but their play around the base of the breakdown and their clearing out of their own 22 and halfway was not good, and their general kicks and play as well were not good. Damian McKenzie on a couple of occasions kicked the ball long. It was not contestable. It didn't give the All Black wingers or backs an opportunity to get out there and contest with the ball. Basically gave England some free ball. So those things need to be looked at, analysed, and see how they can go better. I think we're going to need to see some positional changes in this All Black team. Halfback's a big issue for me. I think we need to go with Ratama. He just brought an extra spark when he came on. He would have been very nervous as well. He came on at such a pivotal moment in that game where it was pressure cooker pressure for him. He handled it very well, I thought, but give him an opportunity to start the game against Fiji, and I think we're going to see a different coordination of the All Black backline. I'm going to put out a video this week talking a little bit more about the All Black selections and around what I think they need to do moving forward based on these two first test matches we've seen from them this season. So look out for that one on my channel. But in closing this one, I've got to give England a lot of credit. They came to New Zealand, they played some fantastic rugby. They came up a little bit short in both test matches. They could have won both test matches, no doubt about it. But on this particular night, it was Beauden Barrett that I thought made the difference against England. The English team were outstanding. Marcus Smith played one of the best rugby games I've ever seen him play in a white jersey. And credit to him, he played really, really well. Alex Mitchell was really solid from the base of the scrum and the breakdowns as well. And I thought Maro Itoje, even though he gave away a couple of penalties late in the game, he was a stalwart in the forwards, as was George Martin. They played really well. And young Baxter again in props, he had another good game for England, so he's going to be a great find for them as they move forward. Look, this England team isn't missing much at all. It's just the bounce of the ball here and there, a couple of decisions here and there, and these two games could have gone either way. And I think they showed in that first 60 minutes of this game how clinical they are and how fundamentally structured they are, as this England team are at the moment. On any given day, this England team could beat the best rugby teams in the world, no doubt about it. And the All Blacks were a little bit fortunate again on this situation. They did pull this one out of the bag. So the final score, All Blacks 24, bet England 17 in a cliffhanger at Auckland's Eden Park. And it was a fantastic game of rugby no matter what side of the fence you sit on. Let's hope England has more luck this weekend in the football final of the Euros against Spain. Good luck to them in that one. Let's hope they can win that performance. And England, thank you for coming to New Zealand, my home country, and showing us how good you are at playing the great game of rugby, because you should all hold your heads very, very high. It was a great performance over two test matches, and I can't wait for the return series now back in England in the autumn time when the All Blacks will be on tour there. So absolutely brilliant game. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this game, whether you're an England fan, a New Zealand fan, or just a rugby fan in general. I'd love to read what you thought about the players and the way that this game was played in Eden Park last night. Okay, I'm going to be back this weekend with plenty more content about some of these amazing games that are being played, so make sure you stick around for that. The best way to do it, of course, is hit the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the content today, and I'll see you all again very soon right here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Until then, it's time to say adios from Mexico. Until next time, stay safe, stay well everyone, have a fantastic day, keep enjoying your rugby, and it's bye for now.